faculty members, students, and all who have gathered here. A warm good evening to one and all. Once again, I feel extremely honored to be a part of this Enlight series organized by Trivandrum Management Association for all the B schools. The topic for the day is career decision and mindfulness. Let me take this privilege to welcome our chief guest of the day, Ms. Sharika Menon, founder and CEO of Mindport and Principles Academia. We welcome you, ma'am, to the session.
Thank you so much.
Let me invite Wing Cadder Rajeshri D. Nair, the chairperson of TMA Students Chapter and co-chair and Group CEO, Medicaid Ethos Private Limited. We welcome you, ma'am, to the session. Let me welcome Ms. Jisha Gopi, Assistant Professor and Training Placement Officer, CET School of Management, Dr. Rajesh Painkavil, Professor and HOD, Rajdhani Business School, to the session. Last but not the least, I welcome each one of you who have gathered here, accepting our invite. And this evening, thank you so much for joining us for the session. Now I may welcome Cadre Rajeshri D. Nair to formally introduce the guest of the day. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. At the outset, let me thank each one of you for finding time to join the session. I know CET has some other engagement, but despite that, I see quite a lot of participants here. Thank you so much for that. What do I talk about Sharika Menon, the one who is epitome of dedication. She is a lawyer and psychologist by qualification. Sharika graduated in law from Kerala Law Academy, Trivandrum, and started her career as an attorney at law in one of India's premier law firms, Luthra and Luthra, New Delhi, and assisted many other corporate brands in country inside India as well as globally. Having taken a sabbatical after childbirth and being highly passionate about psychology, which had deeply improved her, she secretly nursed a desire to learn psychology. Further, she did her master's in psychology and soon followed it up with MPhil from Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, Cochin during 2013-14. During keeping in mind her background in law, she did research on forensic psychology and narcissism and psychopathology in economic offenders. In 2015, she formed Principles Academia, a research skill development institute, along with her mentor, Dr. S. Subramania, which helps research scholars and professionals with their research.
Your voice is not audible, ma'am, now.
Ma'am, you're not audible.
Can you hear now?
Yeah. Yes.
In March 2018, she had an innate calling to serve the society in her favorite field, and thus came into existence Mindport, a therapy center dedicated in assisting and caring for people and their emotional mental health. Mindport is in Trivandrum, a complete psychotherapy clinic. Regular services of psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and consultant psychologists were made available under one roof for the first time in Trivandrum through Mindport. Mindport caters to a wide age group, and able professionals are equipped to deal with all sorts of emotional and mental issues. Proper assessment with licensed tools and equipments by registered professionals and compassionate assistance to any query has been Mindport's forte since its inception. Mindfulness training is imparted as a part of its wellness program. Sharika Menon also found Agents of Hope, a registered NGO. Agents of Hope is committed to education, medical and mental health, and empowerment of women. Agents of Hope did its best during the Kerala floods in 2018-19 and continues to make a difference through rehabilitation and awareness camps. Agents of Hope stepped in during the times of pandemic corona and made hand sanitizers and masks available to poorer sections of the society, as well as medical health workers, police, and sanitation workers. Sharika is an activist of sorts, campaigning against hartals, and she took up matters of legitimate and peaceful protests, seeking to protect their life and environment. Her articles and poetry had been published in prominent newspapers and magazines. She has held lectures for corporates, professionals, schools, colleges in Kerala, creating mental health awareness. She is a certified mindfulness trainer and practitioner. She has been retained by few corporate houses as their mental health mentor for employee welfare. Her talks have been aired on various YouTube channels. She has also been chosen to be a speaker on various psychological and medical programs. On the creative side, theater has been a passion for her. She picked up the love for this from her celebrated uncle, D. Raghunathan, of the famous Abhinaya Theatre Village and Research Center. She gave her first performance with Rangabodhi's Carnival at Manvalan Para, which was much appreciated by the audience. I think I got that word correct, Sharika. It is
Manavalan Para.
Okay, Manavalan Para. Okay. She lives with her family in Trivandrum and nurtures her love for reading, poetry, movies, music, and coloring. One aspect, Sharika, that you did not write here is dance. I know you are a dancer. So I add that. And so you know the plethora of activities that she is involved with and the talented hub that she is. We are grateful from Trivandrum Management Association and personally me, Sharika, on one phone call, you just agreed to be part of this. Thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours. I welcome you personally and on behalf of TMA.
Thank you so much, Ragshri. Sorry, I am not used to calling you by your full name. And of course, if you call me, I will be here. And thank you so much for that absolute generous introduction. And, I always squirm every time, somebody says these things because it might seem too many things, but it has happened over a certain time. Yes, I have learned dancing, but I don't know if I can actually call myself a dancer. But that is not something that I do on a regular basis, or I can even call myself a dancer. So, but I'm so happy and thank you. I'm so honored and humbled by what you've introduced. I'm a psychologist. I'm very happy to see Elango sir here. He is part of the mindfulness. So it's like having a part of your family cheering for you here because mindfulness is something that we all learn together from Dr. Krishnan, who is our mentor, is my mentor personally on many, many levels. I'm here to present a short window because we have very little time. And this is not a training on mindfulness. This is just to make you understand what the connection, and it's an introduction perhaps, and I will touch just about at the superficial level of what mindfulness is and how it helps with career decisions. So I'm just going to attempt can I share the, yeah, okay. I'm unable to share.
Same.
Yeah, I've been trying to press that, but I'm unable to share. Can you please? Yes, now I can. So welcome to Career Decisions and Mindfulness. I'm Sharika Menon. I'm a consultant psychologist. And if there are doctors in this group, I would ask you to please pardon me because I will have to touch upon a few parts of the brain as well when I pick up on mindfulness scientifically. So this is about career decisions and mindfulness. Now, when we talk about career decisions, obviously, workplace is what comes to our mind. And career when you want to make decisions at career, I think there is one thing that perhaps absolutely throws reflection on is the stress that happens at workplace. Most of the times, the decisions that we take are because of a bad experience or a better experience or because of the stress and the accumulation of negative feelings at workplace, which even according to the World Health Organization says that workplace stress is one of the biggest reasons for depression and anxiety in the country. In globally, about more than 2 trillion people do fall prey to work stress. So what are the common issues at workplace? Office politics, employer pressure, deadlines, relationship issues, interpersonal conflicts, communication problems, harassment, including sexual, low motivation, low job satisfaction, performance issues, unable to fit into the job profile. So these are just a very few number of common issues at the workplace that can lead us to perhaps make our decisions based on either leaving or joining or staying or being unhappy at workplace. So now stress can be physiological, stress can be cognitive, stress can be behavioral, and stress can be emotional, right? So stress also affects the emotion, stress affects our behavior, stress affects the physiological part of ourselves and the cognitive. Now, when I come to cognitive, this is the portion where we talk about career decisions. How? Let's say the cognitive area of the brain or of us is exactly where life skills come into play. If you are sharp in your cognitive space, then your life skills can be improved. So what are the common life skills? There are about 10 life skills that the WHO talks about: self-awareness, interpersonal skills, good communication, empathy, assertiveness, creative thinking, problem solving skills, critical thinking, and then the main thing, which is decision making. Now, decision making, problem solving, critical thinking, all these part of a person is what actually is one of the main pillars of our life skills that can take us or help us navigate efficiently through these stresses. Now, decision making. There are a lot of definitions of decision making and what decision making is and what it is about. But I chose this, which is about Harris in 1980 that was made. It says decision making is a study of identifying and choosing alternatives based on the values and preferences of the decision maker. Making a decision implies that there are alternative choices to be considered, and in such a case, we want not only to identify as many of these alternatives as possible, but to choose the one that best fits our goals, objectives, desires, values, and so on. Now, why I have chosen this, perhaps as I go further, you may be able to understand. Because decision making has extreme critical components like choice making, of choosing to identify from alternatives with your values and your preferences. That means there is our cognitive faculties present here, values and preferences that comes from our environmental factors, and then to consider as many choices and to have goals, objectives, desires, values, and so on. So decision making is not an easy skill. And as all of you would know, I think that our entire life is made of choices. I think a lot of things happen in our life or don't happen in our life based on the choices that we make to choose something or to not choose something. So it is extremely critical to be able to be present at the time of a very important decision-making process. Now, what work stress can affect? Work stress, that is why I'm coming to this. This is why I wanted to talk about decisions, how important it is and what stress can do to us. Now, stress can be because right now, currently, because of Corona, we know that most of the workforce are now sitting at home, working from home, don't have boundaries, right? And then the umpteen number of the kind of information overload that we have from newspapers and our media, and what happens about the vaccinations, about the economy, about your dear people who fall ill. So there is so much of overload stimuli of emotions that most of the times it can stress you out so much because of lack of boundaries between work and home and so many things in the process. So now work stress can affect career decisions, career decision self-efficacy, decision-making styles, negative career thoughts, vocational identity, negative impact on both their personal and professional lives. Excuse me, there is an S missing in lives. So why I took this was because based on a study, which was it's a little older study, but it's a very important study from which then a lot of other studies came forward. It says about 52% considered or made a decision about their career, such as looking for a new job, declining a promotion, or leaving a job based on workplace stress. And that is exactly why I chose stress as a component for career decisions and where mindfulness can help. Effects of stress can be physiological, as in a previous slide that I did mention about the effects of stress on physiological, cognitive, behavior, emotions. And now, how does it affect us physiologically? It increases the risk of coronary heart diseases because of the blood flow. Sometimes there is so much that the blood gets pumped because of stress, and there are clots that are possible, and the thickness of the arteries. All these lead to coronary heart disease. There is high blood pressure and diabetes. Diabetes is another lifestyle disease, and because of the amount of sugar levels in our blood that increases, then of course, and the way stress an excess amount of cortisol and the adrenaline released in the body, the brain is not, it is only equipped to process a certain amount of this um, cortisol, about the stress hormone. So what happens is that it sort of excessively starts getting passed to the rest of the body, and then it affects our metabolic system. It disrupts the digestive, excretory, and reproductive structure. Cognitively, it definitely affects the decision making, our memory, lack of concentration. Many number of times when we are stressed, when we have too many things to do, most of the time, even at Mindport, I hear so many people saying that I'm unable to focus. I'm unable to concentrate. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just there, but I don't know if I'm aware, if I'm participating at the work. There is a meeting going on, but people don't know. Half of the time, in 5 minutes into the meeting, they switch off. So there is lack of concentration. There is reduced work efficiency, which leads to productivity, easily distracted. And then there is racing thoughts. Racing thoughts can also be ruminating thoughts. How does it affect behaviorally and emotionally? Behaviorally, when you're very stressed, too much of stress can lead to depression and anxiety later on if it goes unchecked. So behavioral, there is a change in appetite, use of alcohol and substance abuse. Again, that is another decision, another choice that you make. There is social withdrawal, procrastination, which most of us do under stress. Sometimes there are a lot of things, especially from young adults and children that I hear, that they just don't feel like doing. They just keep it at the last end of it, and then there is a big hurry about things. Sleep disturbances, the first signs that show on you that stress is taking your sleep away. Nervousness, not feeling confident enough, and a level of anxiety. Emotionally, you're anxious, you fear that something bad is going to happen, crying spells, emotional outbursts, anger, sadness, and frustration. Now, when I talk about how it affects cognitively and behaviorally and emotionally, I would like to touch upon the human brain, because we need to understand what exactly happens in the brain and where it affects before I can bring on mindfulness into it, so that just to understand how much physically and mentally, the physical part of it and the mental part of our health is so critically close, and that you cannot see them separately. Most people I have seen that they say that mental health is not given as much as an importance, because it is always when you fall ill or you're sick, then you run, there is a pain, then it is okay for you to run. But when it is mental, when there is a mental strain or a stress, or there is depressive symptoms that you have, then most of us don't want to go forward. We just think, oh, it's just a phase, we'll get through this, right? So now what happens to the brain under stress? There are three key brain areas that I'm talking about. There are many other areas of the brain. There is the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the amygdala and the hippo. I'm only talking about the prefrontal cortex area, the hippocampus and the amygdala, so that it is easier and I don't bore you into these things. Now, amygdala is the most important part of our brain when it comes to the emotional part of it, and when it comes to decision making, because amygdala has a huge impact on decision making. Now, amygdala is the place, the emotion center, and this is where the anxiety, the fear, the aggression, it is where the stress hormones really make a huge difference to. So the pituitary gland sends in all the signs to the body of when there is light, so whether you want to fly, fight, or freeze, all these things happen when the amygdala is being charged. And then there is the hippocampus. Hippocampus is where we have our memories of daily events, spatial memory, mood regulation, and it sort of helps shut off stress response. That means it is important for the hippocampus to be absolutely in its shape and size and in working condition. Then comes the prefrontal cortex area. Prefrontal cortex area is about this area of the brain. And this is where the decision making, the working memory, the self-regulatory behaviors, moods, impulses, problem solving, all the higher executive functions of the brain happens at the prefrontal cortex area. Now, what happens is that when there is excess amount of stress and we respond to it with a flight or fight mode, the amygdala tends to expand. The amygdala tends to expand to such levels. So what happens? The prefrontal cortex area shrinks. So when prefrontal cortex area shrinks, then your higher executive functions have been compromised. And what happens? Your emotional center goes in a hijack. So you call amygdala hijack. Amygdala hijack is a term that is used in psychology. It simply means that your emotions takes over you so much that you are unable to see properly, think properly, focus properly, sleep properly, perform properly. So you should be knowing that amygdala should stay in control and should stay in a certain size, or else the gray area part of our brain shrinks, right? The prefrontal cortex area shrinks and the amygdala starts to take charge of how we behave and emote. So what happens when there is acute stress? There is increase in the size of the amygdala. There are more, and what the amygdala becomes more receptive to stress. Pathways between the hippocampus and amygdala is hardwired. That means that you're constantly either trying to fight or you are trying to leave the place, fly. Brain is under a constant cycle of fight and flight. And the prefrontal cortex shrinks, which again leads to the increased size of the amygdala. Why I'm talking about this is because all these things have an absolute impact on our decision-making capacity. Now, how much does it affect? It affects our memory, it affects our attention, it affects our focus, it affects our flexibility. What happens is that we start becoming rigid in our thinking patterns. We start becoming rigid in the way that we, our receptiveness to stress. Everything becomes extremely rigid. It affects our creativity. We are not able to think creatively, and the speed at which we perform. Now, it all brings us, when we talk about stress, then it all brings us back to well-being. Now, well-being, when we talk about it, there is psychological well-being and there is subjective well-being. What is psychological well-being? Ability to fulfill goals, maintain self-development, establish good interpersonal relationship, career distress, career indecision can affect psychological well-being. So why career decision is important is because if you're unable to take a proper career decision, which again, as a backlog, can only come from a calm and stable mind where there is no amygdala hijack, there is no stress taking over you, and where there is psychological well-being. There is something called subjective well-being. Subjective well-being is again one's own way of assessing one's life connected to career, and this is connected to career indecision, difficulty in career decision, self-efficacy. So subjective well-being is nothing, it is just how you assess your own life. And how you assess your own life is negatively connected to career indecision. If you think of, if you assess that your life is not good, I'm not good enough, I don't know what to do, I am unable to focus, I am never going to achieve this, then there is a possibility that if you do not think clearly, then the career indecision can affect you. Difficult in career decision, self-efficacy. This is where I want to bring in mindfulness. Now, why mindfulness and career decisions? So I had to talk about all these things so that I eventually bring in and give you a proper connection to how mindfulness can help in career decisions. Now, I have always heard when I work with a lot of corporates, and what I understand is that it is not just how you feel at home or what your emotional status is regards of how you perform at home or your history, your family history has been, or how your environment has impacted you. There is a huge impact of what your workplace stress has on you, of the decisions that you have to make, the way that you have to navigate your communication with your team members. One part that I, even world, the WHO talks about is that the work stress and the workplace issues that mostly happen is where you feel extremely unimportant in the chain of your work. You know, where you feel that you're not important in the, and you do not participate in the career making, in the decision making processes of the company. And then your interpersonal relationships, how it gets jeopardized. So when there is too much of stress, when there is too much of disparity at your workplace, then your career decisions can happen. Career decisions need not just be while you're at work. If there are new managers here who are thinking of jumping to a new job, career decisions are important there too. So when you make a decision, make sure that it does not happen from an emotional angle. How should it not happen from an emotional angle? If the decision is being taken based on emotions and not rational thinking. So how do you take a decision on emotion? When you're leaving a job because you don't like four faces in the office, when you're leaving your job because you feel that you're not equipped to handle, you may leave your job because you think of yourself in a poor light, where you feel your self-assessment of yourself is poor, and you see yourself in a low light, your self-esteem, you have self-esteem problems. Then when your communication skill, excuse me, when your communication skills are not appropriate or not up to the level that you hope to, or what is expected out of you. So if you think lot of these things that I'm talking about your decision, even if you're at a new job, even if you're at a critical stage of your job currently and you're thinking of moving, critical thinking and problem solving and self-awareness all come into play. This is where mindfulness helps. So mindfulness has been a huge jargon. I'm sure that Elango sir is here. There are a lot of people that teach mindfulness. There are a lot of courses available on mindfulness around the world. And I want to take a just, okay, there is huge, I don't know if you can hear the sounds. There is huge lightning and thunder here. I'm not sure if the internet will hold good. I hope it does not, leave me. So, according to John Kabat-Zinn was a molecular biologist in the Massachusetts University. So, and he is the one who started the mindfulness into the foray of the normal of the public, where it came into a fold where anybody could access a certain programs in mindfulness. So he had a stress management program in MIT, and this was called MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction program. And according to him, he based it on the Zen principle. Zen principle, again, it comes from Buddhism, but it has not, we cannot say that mindfulness only came from Buddhism. There are a lot of a lot of research that says that mindfulness did come from India as well. So let us not, lose ourselves in saying where mindfulness originated from. But I know that as Indians, we all know and understand the basic component of mindfulness and the philosophy behind it more than perhaps any other country in the world. Perhaps Bhutan, yes. And China as well, of course. So the eastern part of it. So now, according to John Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So now, when mindfulness was taken by my mentor, Dr. S. Krishnan, he is an assistant professor at the Government Medical College Department of Psychiatry. So he's the person who brought in MLM, mindful life management. Been trying to bring MLM is has been trying. MLM is the only program made in India which Elangosa and I are trained in, and we have attended MUCBT course, which is mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy courses, which I have undergone training for as well. And so, according to Dr. Krishnan, we did add another word to it, which is compassionate judgment, not totally non-judgmental, because sometimes it is very difficult to stay absolutely without judgments. So sometimes there is a component of judgment that may come in, but that is why it has been changed to compassionate judgment. So if we break up this definition, what it is, mindfulness is just the awareness that is created, that arises by paying attention on purpose. So when you say on purpose, there is a conscious effort from our side to pay attention in the present moment. So the moment that is here and that is now, without judging it. So there are many techniques that you can follow to attain mindfulness, to do mindfulness practice. But there are about 5 anchor points that we talk about: the breath, the body, thought, emotions, and the environment. The breath and the body are the easier anchor points that one can. So as beginners, it is easier to start, but you cannot have a complete mindfulness without having mindfulness of thought, emotions, or environment. So when we talk about mindfulness as in breath, body, thought, emotions, and environment, it is to pay absolute attention to your breath at that point of time. When you are paying mindfulness of the body, it is to pay attention to parts of your body where you're totally aware of the sensations of your body. And what happens in mindfulness is that people think that mindfulness means meditation, where you just have to close your eyes and strictly just focus at a certain point of any point of your body. No, that is not what it is. From what mindfulness is today, mindfulness can be done even in the bathroom if you must. It does not need to have any critical place, as long as you're comfortable and as long as you can sit and hold your attention, and you're able to hold your attention and focus. That is all that is necessary. So as human beings, Our natural nature of our mind is for it to wander, right? When you're thinking about something, what does our mind do? It wanders off. And when it wanders, it sort of starts collecting things. And when it collects, it has negative biases. You might have, I'm sure that if you can just jog your mind, you would know that most of the times when we set our mind wandering, most often than not, it is the negativity that we pass on to, and it is very difficult for us to stay on or pick on the positive side of it, right? Aspects of it. So, and what happens is that then to this thought, to this negative thought, we add stories and music and all these things to it. And where does that come from? It comes from, again, this amygdala that I'm talking about, because it sort of passes on its perception and its experiences, its memories, because of the negative biases that has been processed in us. And then we start clinging on to it and ruminating on it. And all these things, when it is continuously on a circle, it affects how we think, how we behave, and how we emote. And all these things has an absolute effect on how you make your choices and your decisions. Now, what happens after you do mindful training? Once you do your mindfulness training, there is increased self-awareness, there is reduced stress and anxiety, and all these things that I've mentioned here have 10,000s of research material available around the world, scientific research material, which says that there have been tangible and quantifiable changes in all these things of increased self-awareness, reduced stress and anxiety, improved relationships in the workplace, increased ability to focus and pay attention, increased mental clarity, better conflict resolution skills, and improved impulse control. Now, let's say, how do we attach this to decision making? Let's say career decision making. Suppose your self-awareness increases. When you're more self-aware, you are more aware of your subtle feelings. You're more aware of your subtle experiences of what you're actually thinking of. You're more clued into yourself, so you know what you're thinking of at that right moment, and you are not bogged down by the amygdala where your choices have been guided by emotions. There is reduced stress and anxiety. When there is reduced stress and anxiety, there is more stability, there is more emotional stability. And then there is the possibility of you to be able to take one step back, to think, to add pause. When you add pause, you are able to think a little more clearly. It improves relationships in the workplace. You become more compassionate, you become more empathetic. Empathy and compassion is one component that has seemed to be in, because there is there is another part of the brain which is responsible for the empathy and the compassion component of our brains. Of course, when I say I don't want you to mistake that, each part of the brain only takes care of each. No, there are more than 80 billion cells in the brain, and it is all connected by neurotransmitters. They all talk to each other. So there is a connection of many parts of the brain, but I just point out certain parts of the brain because that is where mostly it is responsible for. So improved relationships in the workplace happen when your communication gets better, when you have compassion, when you are more empathetic, and when you are able to be more inclusive in your relationships at work. Increased ability to focus and pay attention. When you have the increased ability to focus and pay attention, then you know exactly what you want. Then you have increased mental clarity. There is more clarity in why you are choosing, so that you know exactly how much you can apply yourself. So when you have awareness, you know the limit and extent of what you can do. There is no bubble there is no weight of people's expectations about us. There is no burden of what the boss said yesterday, where you don't take it so personally. that then you want to collect all these things, and then you feel that, no, this is not my kind of job. Career decisions also matter for people who are undergoing interviews now. When you undergo interviews right now with the corona and the economic instability the world over, jobs are not easy to come by. So how do you take those career decisions? Sometimes your career decisions have been, they are guided by, influenced by pressures at home, economic pressure, money. Should I choose money over getting a job, just something that I'm not cut out for? How do you make these choices? How do you navigate these choices between right and good? Sometimes it is easy to make a choice between good and bad, but it is very difficult to make a choice between right and good. So when you are self-aware, when you have mental clarity, when your conflict resolution skills and impulse control and your amygdala shrinks, then you are able to make the correct choices and control your impulses. When you control your impulses, then you do not take a job based on just, you know, you know, just because my friends are joining this company, let me join. This is the first job that was offered to me, let me join. And then you get stuck there. And then you don't know. So it is very, very important to make sure that you know what you want exactly. And for that, you need the mental clarity and the ability to focus and pay attention. Now, improvements after mindfulness intervention, as I said, was that improvements in coping skills. Coping skills are one of the most important skill in CBT that we do as well as professionals in the field of mental health, because coping skills is something that is extremely necessary for any person to navigate through their emotions, right? So when you have coping skills, when there is a stressor, when there is a difficult experience in your life, then you know exactly which skill to take from your toolkit and apply to that condition so that you can smoothly transit to another state. Now, regularize thought patterns. Again, decrease rumination and regularize thought patterns. Thought patterns, why do we say a pattern? Brain is kind of an organ that gets stuck and gets attached to patterns. There's a certain pathway that is created, then the brain becomes sometimes rigid to follow exactly the same pattern. So now, if you have a certain negative pattern where a negative bias comes, then you add your emotion to it, then you add something else that somebody else has said, you add your bad experience to it, then you add somebody else's experience to it, you add your self-efficacy or your self-esteem to it, your self-doubt. You may have body image issues, you may have self-doubt. You add all these things to it, and then you're unable to come out of the vicious circle. So what happens is that it regularizes the thought patterns. It improvements in task commitment. You're able to commit to your task better. There is more satisfaction at work. There is flexibility in responding. You do not react when there is something that has been told to you. You do not immediately react, but because when you react, what happens is that you have exercised your impulses. Response is always better than reaction. And response is something that you will be able to create through practicing mindfulness. So response is just the time between action and reaction. So you take a small gap, you're able to find that gap so you can use your mental faculties before you apply it. So there is flexibility in responding, decreased rumination. Rumination is about having negative thoughts over and over again. Anxiety, people with anxiety have ruminations most often, and it's very difficult. Accurate and reasonable effective forecasting. Effective forecasting is to be able to forecast what the other person is thinking, what the emotional part of it can be. So how do you apply emotions, and how are you able to forecast it exactly? It increases empathy. I did talk about that. Affect regulations, emotional regulations, increase self-determination. You are more determined to finish a work. You're more determined to motor through your job. There is persistence, and of course, very important at work and for students, improved working memory. Now, effects of mindfulness also continues: reduced anxiety, better emotional regulation, it controls negative thoughts, increases self-clarity, better problem solving, and it all leads to longer careers. So when you make a career decision, it all depends on how you navigate it from the beginning till the end, so that you can have a longer career and you enjoy what you do. When Rajshri was introducing me, you may have heard that I used to be a lawyer. I used to be a corporate lawyer in Delhi. And I chose the job absolutely, nobody pushed me into it. I was 10 years old when I decided that I wanted to become a lawyer. My parents were okay. My father may have wanted me to become a chartered accountant, but he was okay because, I had the gift of the gab, and, I was very defensive and I would just talk from the top of my head. So they all thought that, okay, maybe she should become a lawyer anyways. So nobody stopped. I became a lawyer, and immediately I went back to Delhi, and I joined one of the finest law corporate law offices in the country and in the world in Indian presence. And I did well for the first. I did extremely well at my work as well. But it was a huge career decision that I made to shift, to leave an extremely well-paying, satisfying, and glamorous job, uh, to come to something, to a new field that I had no idea of. I only had passion for it. I only had because of the kind of books that I read. Other than that, and of course, my love for the mind and how intrigued I was about the human mind and the philosophy behind it, and about reading about when I used to read literature, there is so much of psychology in literature as well. So I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So that was a career shaking moment for me. It was a decision I was making. It could have gone either ways. But I think somewhere I was not a mindfulness practitioner then. But I think I did do a lot of thinking, and I did know of what I was doing, of all the pitfalls that can come, all the that people reminding me, telling me that you're crazy, you're out of your mind, how could you do this, at this point of time, how can you leave a company like Luthra and Luthra and do what, all over again, do education at this age. So it was a conscious choice I made that I never regret. I'm so happy. And I think, and I hope that I'll have a long career in my present choice, because I think I did a lot of self-regulation and a lot of impulse control before I did it. But I did not fall into it. It did take a lot of time to come to this and to motor on with what I'm doing currently. So, and of course, there were moments of self-doubt, there were moments of anxiety, there were moments of thinking, did I make the right choice, when there were so many difficulties that came in. But at the end of it, there was clarity. And I think this is one of the best career choices and the best career decisions I ever made. So I think with that, I will stop, because there is a time limit. Because of the time limit is why I did prepare the PPT, because I did tell Ravishri that, I don't like presentation with PPT, because I like to talk out of, naturally as it comes, informally, because sometimes when it is a matter of the mind, most of the times I do not like to be very formal, and I like to talk the way I would talk. So if there are any questions, I would like to take. Thank you so much for the patient here. And there is so much to talk about mindfulness. Mindfulness is extremely vast. Nobody is an expert in mindfulness, is what even our mentor tells us, because you need to keep practicing. So I think it's been about 10 years since I got introduced to the concept of mindfulness, but I have been practicing mindfulness only in the past 7 years, perhaps. And then I got trained in it. And mindfulness is a part of wellness in Mindport, my clinic. And mild to moderate cases of anxiety and depression and PTSD, we do use mindfulness as a training program. So thank you so much, and thank you, TMA, for the opportunity given to me, and thank you, Radhashri, personally, for having me here.
Before we go on to the question answer session, I have a question. How mindfulness cater for analytical assessment of what we do on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, the thing is that mindfulness creates awareness, right? So if when you say analytical, you said analytical basis? Yes. So when you say analytical basis, are you talking about number crunching?
Yes.
Okay. So how can you quantify? I just want to understand your question right.
Correct. To quantify.
How can you quantify mindfulness?
That's right.
In daily life, right? You meant in daily life? Okay.
That's right.
So when you start becoming mindful through mindful practices, you understand that you do not make too many choices at the same time. You understand that you're little more under control. You understand that you don't disasperate. You don't feel yourself being pulled by different places. Your decisions are clear. You are able to focus. You are not emotion bound. And then the pressures from outside, sort of just passes you by. The thing is that you are not engulfed or pulled or sucked into the outside noises that come. So how do you quantify is in the way that you have navigated through the day in your work, in your personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, how you see yourself, how there is no hurry for anything, how you do not compare yourself with the earlier you, the future you, or with somebody else altogether. So I think when you say quantifiable, can you number crunch it? I'm not sure if you can number crunch it, but yes, there have been researches which says that there is, when there are pre-test and post-test done, there are many researchers which say that you are able to quantify in the way that you make your decisions, in the clarity, in the portions of the brain. There is thickness of the prefrontal cortex area. There is thickness. It enlarges the amygdala. It shrinks, which again allows you to. These things are quantifiable. But how you do in your daily, it is in the clarity. Say that you are number crunching and the clarity of the less number of mistakes you make, right? That can be quantifiable. I don't know if I've answered your question right, Radhashri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, ma'am.
Yeah, Jisha, go on.
Yes. Before the students asking queries, may I ask you one simple question?
Sure, Jisha.
Yeah, ma'am. Like apart from taking up sessions or training in mindfulness, are there any methods or some simpler ways by in which we'll be able to learn some kind of mindfulness
Of course, ma'am,
skills?
there are techniques. There are many techniques. There are body scan techniques. There are other lot of other techniques where we practice during mindful practice. There is a 2-day workshop that we conduct, and there are 8-week programs that we conduct. There is a grounding technique that we can do, which is simple for starters. That we can if we have time, then perhaps we will be able to do that. It is just a 3-minute to 5-minute grounding technique where we pay attention to our breath and to our body sensations and how to, sort of bring in and focus in your breath to one place at a certain time. So there are these techniques that you can do simply sitting anywhere in any corner of your house or your workplace, and you can practice mindfulness. Research says that about 10 minutes a day, continuously for about 8 weeks, do create changes in your brain.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Now I request the students to ask any queries if you have. Yeah, ma'am, there's a question coming up from Jebin.
Yeah.
Could you please, just a second.
Yeah.
Could you please tell how can one overcome overthinking? And can a person really overcome overthinking?
So clinically, if you talk about it, Jebin, overthinking can be associated with obsessive compulsive tendencies. You know, I do not want to scare you with jargons or disorders that you may think, you know, or do I think, but overthinking sometimes does relate to. But yes, overthinking is something that you can control. And with mindfulness, definitely. Because like I told you earlier, rumination is overthinking. It's about a thought that keeps coming. Overthinking is also part of anxiety. When if you're an anxious person, then there is overthinking that can be a byproduct of this, because you tend to overthink and overanalyze many aspects of it because you want to control it. One thing of the anxiety is that your fear that you may not be able to, you may be out of control. And then there is this tendency to want to control it, right? So yes, one can overcome overthinking by analyzing and observing. And that is why practicing mindfulness allows you to create that gap. You know, when I talked about the hardwired, the amygdala and the hippocampus being hardwired and continuously being in the flight and fight, all these things are part of the overthinking process. So yes, you can overcome, you can control overthinking. If it is beyond, if it is associated with any comorbidities of any clinical mental illness like anxiety or depression, then it may need some medical assistance also. But otherwise, if it is on a mild to moderate level, then definitely mindfulness can help.
Ma'am, the next one is, how do mindfulness influence decision making in a corporate world?
By managers.
Managers.
Yes, I think I did talk about this. Mindfulness influences decision making in corporate world. In a corporate world, what is it that we always do? Every single day you are making decisions, right? As managers, as bosses, as an employee, as a team member, even to choose to go to work, keep your monitors open, even at the slightest of things, you are making decisions, right? So decision making, there is no mindfulness in decision making in corporate world is separate, on a different world is separate. I am just trying to associate to this because there is workplace stress. That is exactly why I brought in workplace stress, because when there is workplace stress, WHO says that absenteeism and depression and anxiety from workplace stress is one of the highest cause of mental health around the world. So how do you make decision in the corporate world by managers? Is that the managers are able to make decisions based on inclusiveness. If you practice mindfulness, then your critical thinking is improved. There is mental clarity. Interpersonal skills get better, right? And then compassion is increased, self-awareness is increased. When all these things are increased, impulse control is increased. So when there is somebody who is unable, let's say that you're a manager and you're a line manager, and then you have a string of teammates under you. So what happens is that when you have to take a team along with you, right? So just being a hard task master is not enough. To be a leader, you need to perhaps act from behind. That is what I believe in, that a leader leading from front might not be as effective as a leader staying behind and guiding properly how your teammates should be taken to it. So not to take the entire limelight, right? So for a leader to be able to navigate the issues of the team members as managers, you need to have critical thinking, problem solving skills, decision making skills, and what we talked about earlier was of coping skills. And all these things are absolutely positively influenced with mindfulness techniques and practicing of mindfulness. I hope I've answered that.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Pranav.
Yes. Could you suggest some books which had inspired you the most?
Mindfulness for books, yes. There is Catastrophic Living from John Kabat-Zinn. Then there is, I'll do something. I will pass on a list of books that we have. I will pass it on to Wing Commander Radhishri. There are simple books that you have. that has been written for easy reading, and I will quote some of those books there. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. I am inspired by Ikigai.
Okay, definitely, Pranav. I'll make sure that the list reaches you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Any more questions from the student side?
Yeah, there's one direct question that has come to me. Can someone choose mindfulness as a career?
Mindfulness, like I said in the decision, is an awareness that is created by focusing on your on the present moment purposefully and not judgmentally, right? So mindfulness is an awareness. Can you have a career in awareness? I don't know, but I do have a career in training with mindfulness. So if you are keen, if I understand your question right, you want to perhaps impart mindfulness. MLM programs are run by the medical college. Mindport also holds mindfulness sessions, mindfulness MLM training sessions, 2-day workshops, and 8-week programs. If you're interested, then please send your queries to Ragashri, and I will definitely make sure that next time you're open to a course, you can definitely join. But to be a mindfulness practitioner, the minimum qualification you must have is that at least for 1 year, you must practice mindfulness personally. If you do not do that, if you are not a mindfulness practitioner, you will never be able to impart mindfulness to anyone. Because always be careful that mindfulness, from how we see it, should only, if you want to choose it as a career, then it would be an added advantage if you can be, at least a postgraduate in psychology, if you have that. And because I know there are many, different parts of the country where they present mindfulness programs, but it is not authentically done because they feel that anybody and anyone can do it without understanding the real essence of mindfulness. So you can have a career, sir or madam, whoever would want to have that. If you're really serious about it, please get in touch with me. Ragashri will have my credentials and my email ID or my number, and definitely I can guide you through it.
Yeah. Madam, this is Dr. Rajesh.
Hello, Dr. Rajesh.
Hi, nice to meet you. And I'm having a query. How we can, you talk about negative thoughts and all, how we can get rid of these negative thoughts? Because that's the basics of anxiety and all. And definitely we know that there are some mechanisms like yoga, meditation and all. But other than that, what we can do to remove or get rid of from these negative thoughts totally? I don't know whether it is possible that when totally it is possible or not. But when we are going to initiate our career, definitely we are talking from that point of view, right? So when you are initiating your career or when you are continuing your career, so how we can get rid of from that negative thoughts, or we can minimize that negative thoughts to a great extent, other than meditation or yoga?
Okay. So meditation and yoga are good ways of, bringing your focus towards yours. And I told you the changes it makes in your brain. Why I insist on the brain part of it is because your entire mental events happen through your brain, right? So all these negative thoughts also come from your brain. So now can you totally negate and delete negative thoughts from your system? I don't think so, right? You cannot be a human being if you only have positive thoughts. I think that negative thoughts will come, and it should come, because sometimes fear is necessary. Like I said in amygdala, sometimes fear is necessary to protect yourself. So sometimes a bit of negative thinking might be helpful for you. But if you get sucked into it totally, if your negative thinking is such levels where it debilitates your working, it debilitates your normal way of conducting your life, that is when negative thinking becomes a hazard for you, an occupational hazard, a living hazard, a thinking hazard for you. So when negative thoughts happen in your mind, You cannot always say that, I don't know, I'm a psychologist, but I don't know how pep books and self-help books say that look at the mirror and say 10 times, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, and then all your negative thoughts are gone. I really don't understand how that works from what I've been understanding and practicing in my career. It doesn't work that way. So when negative thoughts happen, if you are aware that your negative thoughts are taking a certain pattern, then you are able to create an alternate thinking pattern to it, right? So when you create an alternate thinking pattern to it, you are creating a certain space. When you're creating a certain space, you are able to think from two sides and not just from one side. So then you're able to apply your better judgment to it. So when you keep practicing this, again, sir, there is a component of mindfulness in here, is to pay attention to that negative thought, to observe that negative thought. Where is it coming from? Where is the trail of the thought? So when you start thinking, then you evolve, then you recognize that, is it actually a negative thought? Is it a perceived threat, or is it a real threat? Is it a real negative thought, or is it a perceived negative thought? How much of story did I add to this negative thought? The thought may have come as a small thing. The negativity is what we add to it, and that is what we call judgment. Right? So it is us who add the negativity to it, based on our experience, based on our memory, based on so many things from our environment, our perceptions, our attitudes, all these things. So you may not be able to totally negate the negative thoughts, but if you're able to observe from where it is coming, if you're verifying it, then you may exercise a certain pattern of evaluating that negative thought, therein you being able to create the gap. And then your alternate thought can come in and perhaps even help you. I hope I've answered that, sir.
Yeah, I said absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Isha, any more questions?
No, ma'am, no more questions. Thank you. Thank you, Sharika, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Rajesh, may I request you to do the honors?
Yeah, thank you so much. No, so it was a wonderful session by today's guest of the day, Sharika Menon, on the topic which is very relevant, appropriate, and to be debated, that is career decisions and mindfulness. In the present situation, I think, and I am very sure that this topic is very much relevant for debate, deliberate, and discuss. So I'm very sure that the resource person extended the honesty to the maximum by putting all thoughts into the sharing of knowledge. And as rightly mentioned by Sharika, that four things I think, that is one, body, emotion, environment, and thoughts are largely regulating your mindfulness as well as career decision. So according to me, it's only my version, or it is only my viewpoint, that when we are going to fine-tune our body means by means of physical exercise, by means of, as already mentioned by ma'am, that we can do yoga, meditation and all, the way you are going to fine-tune your body, and the way you are going to control your emotions, because emotions, I think, are largely going to play a vital role in that, right? And then how we are going to regulate our environment. So some of the environmental factors are not under our control, but definitely some of the environmental factors are under our control. So how we are going to regulate our environment and how we are going to facilitate our thoughts. So when we are going to make all these combined factors together, as already mentioned by Sharika Menon ma'am, that when we are going to put that in a right direction, I think we are able to achieve that mindfulness and leads to a very positive direction regarding our career as well as career decisions. Ma'am, it was a wonderful thought, wonderful deliberation you had, and we extremely thankful to you. And I take this opportunity to extend hearty thanks and gratitude to our resource person for the day, Ms. Sharika Menon, for her wonderful thoughts and deliberation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I also take this opportunity to extend sincere thanks and gratitude to our leader who is initiating all these programs for the student chapters of Trivandrum Management Association, Wing Commander Rageshri Nair. Ma'am, thank you very much. Thanks for taking all the initiatives, because the initiatives what TMA is taking really enriching the knowledge of students, not only students, but also faculty members like me. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I also take the opportunity to extend thanks to other members of faculty from different chapters, as well as the senior members of TMA who are all present here, as well as students who contributed with their presence and questions to make this program a meaningful one. Thank you. Thank you once again. Good night.
To all, Sharika, Rajesh, Sunu, Jisha, and of course, now that Sharika is introducing a lot of people who are part of TMA as like, I don't know, Dr. Elangu, am I?
Yeah, yes, Elangu sir, yes.
Nice. I'm getting to know you through her, though I think you're part of TMA. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, all of you. God bless. And thank you, Sharika, for taking your time. And though she was unwell, she made it a point to be here because it was a commitment. Thank you so much, and get well soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sunu. Thank you, Jisha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jisha, madam. Thank you, Rajesh sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And Sonu as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Sunu.
you all.
Well,
It was a
thank you very
fantastic
much,
session.
because I had to personally, as
Thank you, Rajeshri ma'am, for arranging such a wonderful program.
I take the names of Ilango sir, as well as senior members, Ilango sir, Babu Chidambaram sir, and all the senior members here, present here. Personally, I had to take their names. So please accept the token of gratitude from our side, as well as Jisha ma'am for coordinating the questions. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Before you close down, next session is by Mr. Shravan Charya. He's a CEO and founder member of Social Ladder.
Oh.
And he runs an establishment in Singapore as well as in Bangalore. Sharika, I don't know whether you know him. It's
No, I don't.
Let's Corp. He's a social entrepreneur and has been in this industry for last almost 30 years.
Oh.
So it will be interesting to have a session next month.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sharika.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.